Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something that literally impacts every single one of us. We're distilling the absolutely timeless leadership principles from part 4 of Dale Carnegie's legendary work. We're going to see exactly how to guide others effectively and honestly make our lives a whole lot easier in the process. Because let's face it, we all face this ultimate dilemma. How on earth do you change someone's behavior without making them completely resent you? Whether you're a manager leading a team, a parent trying to keep the peace, or just working alongside a colleague, it's so easy to slip into harsh criticism or just barking demands. But as we all know, that usually just builds a giant wall of resentment. So today, we're going to reverse engineer exactly how to solve this using a tried and true framework. All right, so let's get right into it. We're looking at Dale Carnegie's absolute classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And specifically, we're zeroing in on the final section of his book, his 9 rules for being a leader. Now, Carnegie didn't just make this stuff up. He spent years studying human nature. He researched the lives of historical heavyweights, from Julius Caesar to Thomas Edison, and observed real everyday interactions to figure out what actually gets people to change their behavior willingly. To make this super practical for you to actually use, we've broken it down into 5 key areas. We'll look at the core secret to leadership, how to deliver feedback without causing offense, protecting people's ego, inspiring others, and finally, 3 real-world applications you can use today. Okay, kicking things off with part 1, the real secret, the foundational pillar of leadership. Here's the thing, a true leader always starts with genuine appreciation. Why? To lower those defenses. Think about it. If someone sits you down and immediately starts listing off everything you've messed up, your walls go straight up, right? Of course they do. But if they begin by sincerely acknowledging your hard work, well, suddenly you're much more open to whatever comes next. And from there, a great leader thoughtfully aligns the task with the other person's own desires. Carnegie gives this brilliant example. Instead of just barking an order at an employee, let's call him John, to sweep the stockroom, you explain that polishing up the space will make the whole team look highly efficient for arriving customers. You give John a sense of pride. You give him a direct, personal reason to actually be happy about doing the job. Moving right along to our second pillar, how to deliver feedback without causing offense. This one is huge. Look, the wrong way to give feedback is something every single one of us is guilty of. Direct criticism. Pointing out faults. It's just our default human reaction, isn't it? But Carnegie advises us to completely flip the script. He says we should call attention to an error indirectly. Or, even better, lead by admitting our own flaws first. Think about it. Hearing about your own mistakes is a bitter pill to swallow, but it becomes a whole lot easier to digest when the person giving the feedback humbly admits that, hey, they're far from perfect themselves. Carnegie actually used this exact tactic with his 19-year-old niece, Josephine, who was working as his secretary at the time. When he noticed she was making errors, his immediate gut instinct was to criticize her. But then he paused. He reminded himself of all the blunders he made when he was 19. So he went up to her and said, "You have made a mistake, Josephine, but the Lord knows it's no worse than many I have made. I've been guilty of so many stupid, silly things myself. I have very little inclination to criticize you. But don't you think it would have been wiser if you had done so-and-so?" I mean, wow, it completely disarms the entire situation, right? And that leads us perfectly into our third area, protecting ego and pride. This is all about handling people with care. There's this incredible story in the book that vividly illustrates this. It's about how General Electric handled a really delicate situation. They had this brilliant genius on staff named Charles Steinmetz. He was absolutely indispensable to the company, but, and it's a big but, he was a complete failure as the head of the calculating department. They absolutely had to remove him from that position, but they didn't dare offend him. He was too valuable. So what did they do? It's genius. They gave him a flattering new title, Consulting Engineer of the General Electric Company. Now, this was for the exact same work he was already doing, but the new title allowed someone else to quietly take over the department. GE effectively let him save face, kept him happy, and entirely avoided what could have been a disastrous storm of resentment. The real takeaway here? Nobody, and I mean nobody, likes taking direct orders. It makes us feel small. Carnegie highlights a South African factory manager named Ian McDonald, who found himself facing an impossibly short deadline for a massive order. Instead of aggressively pushing his staff and demanding they work double time, he called a meeting and just asked his team questions. He asked, "Is there anything we can do to handle this order? And can anyone think of different ways to process it?" By simply asking questions, he let his team take ownership. They came up with the solutions themselves, and they actually met that impossible deadline with this incredible, enthusiastic, we-can-do-it attitude. This perfectly shows why trampling on someone's pride is just so destructive. Carnegie actually includes a quote from the legendary aviation pioneer and author Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who said, "Hurting a man in his dignity is a crime." It's a powerful reminder that preserving someone's dignity is absolutely paramount to maintaining their loyalty. If you strip away someone's self-dignity, you are simply never going to get their best work. It's that simple. All right, let's look at part 4, how to actually inspire and motivate people for success. The core principle here is often famously summarized as give a dog a good name. Now, when an employee's work starts to slip, your first instinct might be to threaten their job, right? Lay down the law. But Carnegie suggests doing the exact opposite. He says you should act as though the trait you want them to have is already one of their outstanding characteristics. There's a story in the text about Henry Hank, a service manager who had a mechanic whose work was steadily deteriorating. Instead of just bawling the guy out, Hank called him in and reminded him of what a stellar, reliable worker he had always been in the past. He effectively gave him a glowing reputation, a reputation the mechanic then desperately wanted to live up to. You see, by praising every tiny little improvement and making faults seem super easily fixable, you are giving people a fine reputation to live up to. It practically guarantees they'll make prodigious efforts not to let you down. Think about it. If you tell someone a task is impossibly difficult and that they're terrible at it, well, you've just destroyed their incentive to even try. But if you encourage them, if you make the flaw seem like a tiny little bump in the road and genuinely praise their efforts, they will work tirelessly to improve for you. Carnegie actually leans on Shakespeare to drive this point home. Assume a virtue if you have it not. If you openly assume a virtue in someone else, if you publicly state that they are a hard worker or deeply creative or exceptionally reliable, they are naturally going to stretch themselves to fulfill that positive prophecy. It's like magic, but it's just human psychology. Okay, we've covered the principles. Now, for part 5, taking all this theory and putting it into daily practice. Let's apply this whole framework to 3 very different, very common relationships: correcting a coworker at the office, getting a child to do their chores at home, and handling an underperforming vendor in a business setting. Let's see how this actually works. Scenario 1, the office. Imagine you've got a coworker who hands in a report that is just riddled with formatting errors. Instead of calling out their bad work directly and instantly making them defensive, try using Carnegie's 3rd principle. Say something like, "Hey, I used to struggle with this exact formatting when I first started. I made an absolute mess of my first few reports." By placing yourself on their level and admitting your own past mistakes first, you completely remove the sting of the feedback. Actually, scratch that. You make it feel like you're teaming up with them. They will be far, far more receptive to your help in fixing the current report. Okay, scenario 2, at home. Let's say your child's room is a complete disaster area. Rather than yelling at them to clean it up, which, let's be honest, is a direct order that usually just results in dragging feet or total pushback, ask them questions. You could say, "Hey, what do you think is the fastest way we can get all these toys organized before dinner?" By doing this, you're letting them participate in the decision-making process. You're giving them ownership of the solution, which dramatically increases their willingness to actually cooperate. And finally, scenario 3, dealing with a vendor. Let's say a business vendor delivers a crucial shipment late. You could call them up and threaten to pull your contract, but that just creates bad blood. Instead, use the give a dog a good name principle. Remind them that they have always been one of your absolute most reliable partners over the last couple of years. Tell them you were really surprised by the delay because of their usually impeccable track record. Bam! You've just given them a good name to protect, and because of that, they will very likely rush to fix the current issue just to prove that your high opinion of them is still justified. The truly incredible thing about all of Dale Carnegie's principles is that they apply to human nature universally. It doesn't matter who you're dealing with. The next time you need to change someone's behavior, remember, true leadership is not about demanding compliance. It is about inspiring cooperation, protecting people's dignity, and genuinely appreciating the people around you. So as you go about your day and face those inevitable moments of friction, who will you empower today?